Hello to everyone who is joining us. Welcome. We will be starting in 2 minutes just to give everybody a chance to join on to our public webinar. So we'll be starting about 12:02 and thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting in about 1 more minute just to give everybody a chance to join our public webinar for today. Okay. We're going to go ahead and start. Welcome to our public webinar. As you may know, we do these every month, the last Thursday of the month in different areas that Community Legal Services practices. Today's public webinar is on residential solar financing, understanding offers, and resolving disputes. And before I hand it over to our guest speaker expert today, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Community Legal Services. We are a nonprofit law firm committed to increasing fairness in the civil justice system by advocating, litigating, and educating on behalf of Arizona's most underserved communities. We represent individuals, everything from brief advice to large lawsuits, but we also go out in the community virtually and in person and talk about people's individual rights. So if you are from an agency or a different area in our communities and would like us to come and do a webinar about a certain topic, just reach out to us. We are happy to do that. We are in 5 counties: Maricopa, Yavapai, Mojave, La Paz, Yuma, and we also have a farm worker office that is in San Luis within Yuma County. So if you're within any of those 5 counties, you can apply for services with us, and we will show you how to do that at the end of our webinar. However, if you are in different parts of the state besides those 5 counties, you're in luck because we also have sister organizations, Southern Arizona Legal Aid to the southeast, and DNA People Services to the north, who also assist and provide legal assistance for free. So some of our areas, today we're focusing on consumer, but other areas that we provide free legal assistance are education, employment, including unemployment, wage and hour, and farm worker rights throughout the entire state. Family law, really focusing on victims of domestic violence. Housing, really focusing on tenants and also foreclosures of homes. Healthcare and economic benefits, really focusing on SSI, SSDI, access and all tax, criminal set-asides, and tax, really focusing on federal tax. So if you have issues in any of those areas and need legal assistance, you can apply for our services. And again, I will show you how to do that at the end of our presentation. Okay, I am now going to pass it over to our expert. Anthony Clark practices in consumer law at Community Legal Services. He has been doing many solar panel cases. So we are in luck today to have him go over this with us. One more thing about Anthony, as you know, just like the rest of our presentations, we can't give individual legal advice during these presentations. You would have to apply for services, but we can talk about legal information, what the law says, in general. So if you have questions, you can just type them in the chat. We will get to those at the end. Again, we can't provide legal advice questions, but if you have a question about the law or something that Anthony says, just put it in the chat and we will get to those questions at the end. Okay, Anthony, I am handing it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this review of solar energy financing for homeowners. And it's a very important subject because if you're a homeowner, you've probably been solicited for purposes of financing a solar system. Certainly, I have been by telephone and many other ways, but the door-to-door salesmen are the ones we'll sort of focus on today. And our goal is to help you understand what it is that you might be offered, and if there's value to be found in that offer, how you can find it, and give you clues as to what are the common misconceptions and misleading promises about the process. One of the big ones is that it's free. They'll tell you that it's free, or that it's paid for by the government. There's not really a lot of that, but we'll talk about the programs that are available. They'll tell you that there are tax credits, and there's qualifications on that as well. There are no tax credits unless you owe taxes for the year that you're buying the system, and then you can apply credits to that tax year. You can carry forward some of it, but that's really getting into tax advice. But suffice to say, if you don't have tax liability, the tax credit portion of the offer is not really useful at all. It's important to understand the true costs of what you're financing when they make you an offer to sell you and finance you this system. We can tell you the average price of the systems that we've seen is about $45,000. So it's fully like buying a car, a nearly new car, except that it would be attached to your roof. So we'll talk to you about how to evaluate the system that they're proposing, and how all of this fits into Arizona's energy landscape. And we'll talk about the methods of financing and the components of what you're actually buying, and about disputes that come up, and how we find conclusions, resolutions to those. Next slide, please. One thing we found, which is reassuring, is that solar works. Solar does generate electricity, and the electricity that the systems generate gets used in the residence first. And whatever is generated in excess of what's needed in the residence at any given instance is exported to the utility company, and they have to give you credit for that. But understanding the scale of that, or understanding how much energy you can expect your system to generate, is important in making the decision about how much you may be financing and paying in a payment each month. But does it work? Can it work? Yes. Navigating the offer. Some financing options are more complex than others, but for the best results, it's a real simple, well, I won't say simple, but it's not overly complicated to measure what you're paying for the system compared to what you think the output of the system will be during its service life. These systems have a service life of 25 years, so it's a long and major financial commitment to an investment, and various considerations we've identified. We think anyone would benefit from bringing these things in mind before they make such a decision, and especially considering what you plan to do with your home. If you're going to attach this machine to the roof on your home, it's a long-term investment. It can be moved with you if you sell and move, but it's a bit of trouble. So if you have plans to move, then maybe a solar system and investing that in that machine will not be a wise idea. But it just depends. Keep those things in mind. Um, and then disputes when they arise. What are the nature of the disputes that we see, and how are they typically resolved? The disputes can be resolved frequently by avoiding them. If you can uh, understand what you think the system is going to produce, and then you can measure that after the system is in place. And if it's doing what you thought, then you probably don't have a dispute unless there's a money dispute, some difference about what you agreed to finance. But the key to understanding your own energy footprint and how a solar system of a given size will impact your energy cost, it absolutely relies on looking at your utility company portal, logging into your online portal with APS or SRP, and examining how much energy you use. And then, of course, if you log into your portal, you can see whether the system is generating or not and what it's generating, how much it's generating. All right, next slide, please. The way that solar is marketed is kind of tragic in some respects. We understand what they're doing, why they're doing this. They're not coming out and knocking on doors in order to save the environment. The business behind that is mostly an investment business. It's what those private equity lenders want to do with their money. They want to make small loans and put them on people's roofs. They figure that's a pretty safe bet. But the way they do it is it can be abusive, and we've seen a bit of that. But we call them door knockers. They make repeated, uninvited sales visits to your home. And the theory is that if they come out and meet you in your home, uh, unless you go out the back door, you're pretty much captive, and they can pressure you into signing something digitally pretty easily just on a tablet. That's the overwhelmingly how most of these transactions were approved, is by someone marking on a tablet. And elderly folks from a different time, they don't really anticipate that they could be bound to anything serious by making a mark on a little tablet. So they don't really understand the mechanisms of that, and they would probably like to be left alone. And so sometimes the sellers will give them a pretense of, say, sign here so that we can inspect your roof to see if it will be adequate for a solar system, when in fact they're signing to accept the offer. So there's some care that should be exercised there, especially for older folks that you know are at home and might be subject to this kind of sales activity. They are targeting homeowners. They don't have any interest in targeting renters really, but they want a piece of real estate where they can record a lien. Is the chief reason they look for homeowners. They record a lien, so they're attaching their loan, they're securing the payment of their loan with this homeowner's equity. And so that's why they go out and knock on doors, and we do see a lot of elderly folks, widows, and folks at home alone. Um, there is at times, it seems to be seasonal. I can remember seeing a lot of it myself, but there's aggressive advertising on the internet, especially, and they say a lot of free, free, free. We'll talk about what's free. There's not really that much for free. Shouldn't surprise most of us that there's not that much for free. But they will emphasize savings and environmental benefits, and there are absolutely environmental benefits, but not too many homeowners can make a big decision to compromise their own bottom line in order to help the environment. But there are benefits to having solar all around if you get it at the right price. And we've observed that a lot of these sales, maybe not surprisingly, happen during the summer months when it's really very hot and the sun is high in the sky and it's beating down on us relentlessly all day. And when someone suggests that we can turn that energy into money somehow that resonates with us just because of the sheer power, the awesome power of the sun. Surely we can do something constructive with that. And it's true, you can. You can use a machine to turn that into house current that you then use first, and any extra gets exported to the utility company. We'll talk a little more about that. So one of the tricks that we see they use a lot, or one of the incentives, is to when they sell to your neighbor, they will offer your neighbor a referral fee that is undocumented. It's like under the table, often not on any books, and sometimes by cash. And the contractor seller is getting a pretty good payment out of this transaction. So for them to agree to kickback $1,000 or $1,500 when their bottom line might be 15 or 30,000, that's a small price to pay to get people involved. And so there are incentives for your neighbor to tell you that it works. And likewise, the homeowner can be persuaded based on this little bit of cashback concept. And again, back to the tablet and the e-signatures, a lot of folks, particularly older folks coming from a different time, they don't know that executing an offer, accepting an offer electronically may be as simple as marking an X on a tablet, just like if you were marking an X or signing your name on a paper. But there are rules that start at the federal level that determine the validity and effectiveness or defenses to an electronic signature. And the main rule is that the customer needs to consent. They need to agree that business is going to be done electronically. But we do see a number of cases of e-forgery. That is where the resulting documents appear to have been approved, but the customer didn't actually receive and read the document or understand they were being obligated to a long-term contract. They just didn't have the opportunity. And again, the elderly frequently don't use email, so they don't really get that electronic copy to review. Which raises validity questions. The next slide, please. Misleading promises, misleading claims. Here's the big one that is built into a lot of solar advertising that irks me. But when they use phrases like switching to solar and going solar, it sort of suggests that if you make this decision to buy this machine, you won't have a utility bill anymore. And that's just not so, because the sun does not shine at night. But without battery storage, the homeowner, even with a solar system, has to rely on the utility company for electricity at night. So some billing is occurring during the night. It's possible to have a system that is large enough that during the day, it exports, and on top of what you use at home, it exports enough to give you credits to completely pay off what you buy from the power company at night. So then that will result in a zero net bill, but you'll still get a bill. We'll still be billing. Some people, their systems are large enough to generate a credit. And in fact, in the course of a year, they don't pay anything to APS or SRP. They end up actually netting money back. Free solar, there are limited options and the kinds of economic benefits that you can get if you get into one of these free solar options. It is income based, the eligibility. Again, the tax benefit that these sellers will tell you about is only helpful. It's only applicable if you owe income taxes. If you owe taxes for the year that you purchase the solar system, you can deduct up to 30% of the cost. I should say you can apply for a credit for up to 30% of the cost of the solar system, which is applied that credit to tax liability that you have for that year. If you're low income and you don't have any tax liability, then the tax credit is a meaningless detail. In the financing of these machines, uh, because you're attempting to say, well, is this a good idea for me financially? Will I enjoy benefits from this decision to purchase this machine that will exceed the amount of money that I will pay for it? So on a national basis, uh, there's a pretty good consensus that you don't break even for the first 7 to 10 years. But for most of these loans, these are 25-year loans, and 20-year leases is typical. But most of these loans at a point somewhere 7 to 10 years into it, the rate at which you're making a payment, compared to the rate at which the system is generating, it starts to net out. But you can see the benefits immediately once you've got a system installed and running. You can see the generation, and you see your electric bill go down in a corresponding way. Next slide. So what is really free when it comes to solar? Well, first of all, the previous administration did approve a $7 billion federal grant program, billion with a B, and it's grants to the various states to enable them to fund the development of neighborhood utility scale solar projects. So think of solar farms, think of a plot of land that is covered with solar panels, and then people in that community can sort of purchase or opt in to be part of that cooperative, and then they get the benefit of generation or some of the benefit of generation. The Arizona counterpart to that, or Arizona's agency that's getting their portion of the 7 billion, is called Arizona's Solar for All Arizonans, and they are getting 156 million out of the 7 billion for these solar cooperatives that will generate electricity, and for those who participate, give them credits on their bill. And this kind of solar is actually available to renters in multifamily housing. So it's an opportunity to invest a portion of your monthly energy budget in sustainable, renewable energy, and it also results in a lower total cost for energy. The Arizona Public Services Corporation is a private company, and it's regulated by Arizona Corporation Commission. And as part of its public service obligations, it is obliged to provide free solar installations to qualifying low and moderate income homeowners. Now, my notes, I recall that it has to be a roof that is south or southwest facing. It is a 20-year commitment. APS will own the system the entire time. You can't claim any tax credits. And it limits the amount of benefit. You'll get a $30 bill credit. So whatever your system does or doesn't do, you'll get a $30 bill credit. So it's not going to be a money-making opportunity. And this reminds me of a principle that seems to be common to all of this, or a concept that's common to all this business of solar, is that you're renting, in a way, your roof. You're renting your roof. You're sharing your roof space with this lender who wants to put this capital, this machine on your roof. And there's compromises. We'll talk a little more about that. And of course, these programs are designed to enhance access for underserved communities and increase overall participation in renewable energy. Next slide, please. Tax credits. The tax credits are only available to a purchaser, not a lease. If you're leasing, you can't claim the tax credits. But if you're purchasing, then you can claim 30% of the cost during the year that you purchase the system, and receive, I should say, rather, a 30% of the cost credit that you could apply to tax liability. If you don't owe any taxes for that year, I think you can carry it forward. We won't give you tax advice on it, but you can do that, I believe. Um, Leasing, the lease company, we were surprised to learn that the leasing company, the people that are leasing you the equipment, they continue to be the owner of the equipment. They have the equipment, they have to maintain it. Um, and the leasing company, may claim the investment tax credit, whether the homeowner owes any taxes or not. That was a surprising finding, but that apparently will explain why sometimes the lease offers sound more attractive in terms of a monthly payment for similarly sized systems, as they have these other means of making money or balancing their bottom line. Um, Almost never. In fact, I can't think of a single case where someone said, "Yes, I knew when I was going into the solar loan that there would be a lien recorded against my real estate." No one knows that apparently, but it's definitely part of the paperwork that is digital. Um, Typically about 30 pages. And so people don't read these things, even though it is a $45,000, $50,000 transaction. They don't read them, especially when they're pressured in their home to finish something. So someone will leave their home. Uh, but these liens, uh, if you go then to sell or refinance the property or pass the property through your probate estate, then there will be this lien there that looks like a mortgage and has to be satisfied before you can close your real estate transaction. So there is a hook in this. Now the leasing, they typically do not record a lien, typically, but some leasing companies do. The next slide. Um, just like any purchasing decision, you want to understand what you're purchasing. So when it comes to solar, there are just two components really. There's the equipment itself, and then there's installation. So uh, equipment costs have come down and down and down, like so many electronics, down 40% compared to 10 years ago. And their efficiency, that is the amount of electricity they can generate, has increased by about 20 to 30%. And that general trend appears to be indicated for the next 10 years. That's the outlook, is that the panels will continue to go down in cost based on improvements in material manufacturing, and the efficiency will go up. So time could produce a somewhat better system if you were considering delaying in order to get better equipment for less money. Could be true, could be likely true. Um, when the contractor or seller gets the equipment from the manufacturer or whatever source, they will then pay a certain dollar for it, but they will no doubt increase that when they go to sell it to you. They'll mark it up like pretty much all sellers do, and they mark up their labor. They have a cost of labor. They know what they're paying their people per hour, and they will add some cost to their labor. Um, but the big anchor, the thing that really skews these solar deals are the sales commissions. And we have been pressing for reform in this area, and we and others. But the sales commissions on these solar systems are about 15 to 30%. And for example, if you got a system for 23,000, that was going to be your contractor's cost, then your loan application would be for 30, for example, in order to pay the dealer fees. And what are the dealer fees? The sales commission. You're not buying any equipment, you're not buying a warranty, you're not buying anything. It's just a sales commission. And I've never seen that broken out and disclosed as such in any of the paperwork. And none of our clients have ever known that there's a 15 to 30% sales commission just for being the person who came out to get you to mark on the tablet, which is kind of outrageous. But um, another recurrent feature are what we call teaser payments. They will show you a payment on the loan disclosure agreement that will be the payment for 18 months. For example, it's pretty typical, 12 to 18 months. And then they say, if you will meet this funding target, which is typically 25% of the whole loan within the 12 or 18 months, then your payment will remain at that rate. But if you don't meet the funding target, again, about 25% of the total loan within 12 or 18 months, then your payment will go up, typically 25% or so, 30%. So those teaser payments, if someone is reading the paperwork, perhaps they'll see the teaser payment, say that's not so bad, and they won't read on to see what the escalated payment will be if you don't meet your really unrealistic funding target. The next slide. So when you've got a solar system, our most frequent presentation is our client says they don't know whether it's working or not. And the simple answer there is you've got to log into your utility company portal. And then at your utility company portal, you can see what it's doing. But, that's after it's installed. Before it's installed, you should have a awareness of what it is the thing does and how to measure it. So you've got to understand what a kilowatt hour is. We know what a gallon of gas is. That's a very common and well-known measure of energy. So a kilowatt hour of energy is how the electric company bills you. You get billed for each kilowatt hour you use. And if you don't have solar, then everything you use, you're getting billed, and you're getting billed by the kilowatt hour. So to sort of visualize what is a kilowatt hour, the one I like most is it's the equivalent of 10 100-watt light bulbs burning for an hour. So that's really easy math. 10 times 100 is 1,000 watts burning for 1 hour equals kilowatt hour. Some other examples to visualize this: if you run your oven for 30 minutes at 350 degrees, that's a kilowatt hour. Even though it was just 30 minutes, at the rate it's burning, that's a kilowatt hour. You can run your clothes dryer for just 15 minutes and you will consume a kilowatt hour. And the gallon of gas is equivalent to about 33 kilowatt hours, for whatever that's worth. Making this decision to buy solar or not, or invest in solar or not, I think should involve sort of where you are in the energy landscape. Here in Arizona, we have an average kilowatt hour cost of 15 cents per kilowatt hour average, and nationally that's 18 cents. So, it raises the question, how bad do we really need solar? If it's an economic question compared to everyone else in the country, our rates are pretty good compared to the national average, a little lower. In terms of what do we pay, the two largest utility electric providers are SRP and APS. SRP has about 2 million customers and APS about 1.4. And the highest peak rate per kilowatt hour for SRP is 36 cents per kilowatt hour. And for APS, it's 34 cents. These are the highest rates. These are the peak rates, these are the peak rates that are charged at the peak times in the peak months. In the summer, is when we use all of our energy, and Monday through Friday is when most energetic activity is happening with the schools and the courts and so forth, running during the work week. The utility companies set up this peak pricing in order to pay for the extra fuel and maintenance that they have to do during those high demand times, and the summer is highest. So this is the other component that goes back to getting into your portal and seeing how much you're using and knowing when your peak hours are. because basically for both companies, when you use electricity during peak hours, you pay about 3 times the rate that you pay during non-peak hours. Next slide. Utility company portals. You can log on to your APS or SRP portal for no charge, and they will display there the data that reflects what they are billing you for. It'll reflect your usage, how many kilowatt hours are you using, and they'll show you when you're using them. If you have a solar system, it will display and show you how much it's generating on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. And then the billing data will show you how much the utility company is charging you for the kilowatt hours that you buy from them during the night. And then they'll show you the credit that you're receiving for the kilowatt hours that your system exports when you don't use all of the energy being generated at home. It gets exported to the utility company. You'll notice that while they charge you as much as 36 cents per kilowatt hour, SRP will only pay you or give you credit for 3 cents. Or excuse, that should be 0.3 there, not 0.3, but they'll give you credit for 3 cents per kilowatt hour. APS will give you credit for 8 cents per kilowatt hour that's exported. Net metering is such an important concept when evaluating, deciding to get solar or to keep solar or whatever. Net metering measures when you get solar, you have to get a new meter. And the meter you have now, it only measures electricity coming into your household. When you get solar, they put a new meter on your house and it measures electricity coming in at night or during the day if you're not generating enough to cover your needs. And then when your system exports the extra kilowatt hours, it's measuring it in that direction. So the net metering is the net result. How many net kilowatt hours did you need to buy from the utility company? That's what net metering is all about. Next slide. Arizona's energy landscape. I just saw a statistic not on the page here, but Arizona's number 4 in terms of total kilowatts, megawatts, gigawatts installed behind California, Texas, and Florida. Arizona has the optimal among all the states, the optimal conditions for solar. So if you were getting solar because you wanted to make it work and work better than anywhere else, you'd get it in Arizona. Our existing energy supply, what we use here in Arizona, this is how it breaks down. It's about 1/3 nuclear, a little better than half is fossil fuel, natural gas, coal, and other things. And then about 16% renewable. And I think the 13% of being solar, I think that's a little high. I saw another statistic that's more like 10. So in terms of other sources, the Palo Verde nuclear plant provides clean energy and is a significant factor in our low statewide rate. But the more renewable generation we have, the less we have to rely on fossil fuels. And so for those who are environmentally minded, Arizona is still a great place to get solar, even to contribute to saving the environment. The energy potential, like I say, for Arizona, it's the first in energy potential because of our abundant sunlight and favorable climate conditions. Yuma is actually the sunniest city in the world, more days of sunshine than any other city. Solar enhances local economies and contributes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It's true. And then here might be a good rule of thumb. the average cost for Arizona electric customers over the next 25 years is $80,000, measured at about $213 a month on average, plus price increases that are anticipated over the next 25 years. So if your solar system is going to cost less than $80,000 and replace all of your electric needs, then could be a good deal, but that's something to consider. Next slide. Financing and ownership models. Okay, so you can purchase it like a car and own it. You can lease it like a car. You can borrow money so that you own it, but there's a lien on your house and on the system. And then there are other exotic options like the PPA, power purchase agreement, where the lender continues to own the property, or the leaser continues to own the property, and you get a portion of the output, or you get reduced rates compared to market rates. Then there are a couple of government guaranteed loan programs that provide for financing solar installation. That's the FHA 203K. If you're rehabbing a property is typically what's going on there. Major rebuild or remodel. Fannie Mae home style renovation is good for smaller renovation projects. So if you're leasing, the customer gets the benefit. You get the benefit of the generation at a lower than market rate, and you have the option to buy it out eventually for some number, which typically gets smaller as you go on in the lease agreement. But otherwise, if you don't buy it out, then theoretically the lease company will take it back at the end, and you never become the owner. And as we mentioned, the leasing company can claim the tax credit. So it might look a little more attractive in terms of a price because they have this other stream of revenue happening. Power purchase agreements, we talked a little about that. And then the cooperatives, the utility scale community solar farms, is where you don't really pay anything significant up front. You just, it's a box you check on your utility bill, and then you're in. Next slide. What are you actually buying? Well, the equipment, the thing you see on the roof and on the side of the house. There are some warranties that come along with it. Sometimes you get add-ons. So let's talk about the equipment. The panels, the inverter, the cabling and switch. We've said all that stuff has gone down in cost and continues to go down in cost, or the panels they go down in cost and improve in output. Batteries are very, very expensive. And if you had the need to be off grid, or if you lived out somewhere where you had frequent interruptions of service for weather or otherwise, then batteries make a lot of sense to keep your electricity on when maybe your neighbor's is out. But they're very expensive. And of course, they would have the added benefit of the energy that you store during the day. Instead of buying energy from the utility company at night, you could be using your batteries. But they do add quite a bit of cost to the whole exercise. The warranties, just like most manufactured goods, they come with some manufacturer warranties that vary. 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, sometimes 15. The contractors typically limit their warranties for 5 or 7 years. Sometimes they go longer. Sometimes they'll even say lifetime warranty. And they will try to upsell you or include things that you may or may not need, like monitoring. You can monitor your own system from your utility company portal as far as that goes. If you wanted more instantaneous monitoring right there at the moment, you flip on a light and you could see it happening on your screen or something. You can have the monitoring. Load controllers, they can sell you another appliance to insert in your system that will turn off your big loads during peak times. So if you absolutely don't want the kids to cook a pizza between 4 and 7 because it's going to run up the bill, or wash clothes or dry clothes during that time, the load controller can do that for you. Can turn off those big loads just to sort of like a governor on your household electrics. They can also sell you maintenance programs, which frankly, what we've seen is that if they're properly installed and they work, then you're probably not going to need maintenance because the systems don't have any moving parts, um, absent a tree falling on them or a lightning strike or something unusual like that, then they're pretty much just going to sit there and generate electricity for about 25 years. Um, One piece that typically fails with some predictability is called the inverter. It changes the DC electricity that the panels generate into AC electricity. That one has a few moving parts. It's expected to go out in most systems around the 15-year mark, but it's not a hugely expensive piece. It's maybe a $1,200 piece in the scheme of things. Um, with these installers, there has been a very notable trend toward insolvency. There's a whole lot of these contractor installers, self-styled solar experts who make the sales, collect the commissions, and before long, they are in the wind. And the country's biggest one was right here from Arizona, Titan Solar Power, and they filed a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in June of last year. And there are, I believe the bankruptcy court judge said the other day, 30,000 claims in that bankruptcy by Titan Solar Power. So bottom line is you probably won't need the installer warranties. If the system is working, then probably won't need it. But in many cases, you could not enforce it if you did because the installer is out of business. Not all. There's plenty that to stay in business and keep going, but some have taken their profits and gone on down the road. But in terms of costs, evaluating costs, the installation should be about half of the total cost. That's how it seems to break down nationally. About half the cost is the equipment and cabling and switches, and about half the cost should be installation. Next slide, please. Disputes and consumer protections. Dissatisfaction is the thing that we've most encountered. Some people are getting sued when they don't pay their solar lease is what we've seen. We haven't seen anyone sued over a loan yet, but we do see some leases getting sued. I think that's probably because the leasing company, most of all, does not want to come back and get the system. They would rather just sue for money. But the disputes seem to come out of misinformation and omission of important facts, and then disappointing results, especially when people get the impression they won't have an electric bill in the future after they have solar. It's just not true for the reasons that we've talked about. But if someone going into a transaction knows these tricks and knows the things they don't come out and tell you, but that are relevant, then you can see right through that. In about a third of the cases that we've seen, there are contractor failures. That is an incomplete installation. They don't finish the installation. And so the person has an inoperable system sitting on their roof. And so when that contractor goes out of business, it becomes, really tough to get that resolved. But we're having success in that, thankfully. When it comes to collection, many people are shocked to learn how much they borrowed. They had not a good sense that they were borrowing tens of thousands of dollars. It just doesn't enter their mind, although they sign those papers electronically. When it comes to collection, we see the lender and the lease company from time to time will use disconnection as a means of trying to collect money, which for us is crazy because then the system is just sitting there degrading, not generating electricity, not helping anybody. So, but it is something that you can anticipate. If you don't pay, they could send someone around to turn off the disconnect switch, which isn't that hard to turn back on, but that's another subject for another day. And then we do see some harassment that would perhaps give rise to a Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, some harassment and sort of threatening to garnish and threatening to foreclose and this and that, which violates federal law. People have to be concerned always when they do a transaction about the time limits to do something about it. Because this transaction is large and involves home equity, it's subject to the Truth in Lending Act. It's federal law that has also basically been adopted in Arizona as well. But under that federal law, they've got to disclose the terms of the deal in big letters that are easy to read. The interest rate, the total amount you're borrowing, the total amount you're repaying, and the payments are all the key terms. But they also have to include in there a notice that says that the consumer may, at his or her election, cancel this transaction within 3 days. And they've got to provide a form. They got to provide 2 copies of the form in the documents that they provide you. 2 copies of the cancellation form where they've filled out their names and your name and the whatever addresses are necessary, and everything's ready, and all you got to do is sign. And that's a requirement under the Truth in Lending Act, and as well a requirement under the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act. So Arizona has, in effect, a Consumer Fraud Act that has specific provisions for door-to-door solicitation, and the time limit to file a case under the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act is 1 year. We'll talk more about when that starts to run, that 1 year, in just a second, but the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is federal law, and it also has a 1 year statute of limitation. The Fair Credit Reporting Act says that creditors can only report information that's true and accurate. And if they report something that's inaccurate or untrue, they can be liable to the consumer for damages and certainly for attorney's fees that are necessary to get the error corrected or the false information corrected. And our position on that is if they tricked you into signing something and it was fraudulent, then whatever they're reporting and whenever they started reporting, it was false. And so a claim could lie there for that kind of offense. And that's a 2-year statute of limitation. And then, excuse me, the 3-year Arizona Consumer Fraud Act, that should say Arizona Common Law Fraud. Excuse me, the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act is a 1-year statute, but then for just plain old lying and cheating and stealing in the civil realm, Arizona has a 3-year statute of limitation to bring your lawsuit. And then, of course, if the system is broken, just like with any other broken thing you buy, then you have a 6-year statute of limitation under Arizona law if you're suing because it broke and they haven't fixed it if they're obligated to. So it's important when you talk about these time limitations to consider when does this time limit begin to run? It's safe to say that it began to run on the date of the contract. That's a safe bet. It couldn't start before that. But people don't know they're being defrauded if that's the claim. They don't know they're being defrauded the day they're doing the contract. If they knew it at that instant, they wouldn't do it. They would kick those people out of the house. They wouldn't touch that tablet. But people don't know that they may be doing something that is very disadvantageous to them at that moment. So the rule is called the discovery rule, and it says that this kind of limitation period doesn't begin to run against you. The clock doesn't begin running until you knew there was a problem, you knew you'd been defrauded, or a reasonable person would have known, based on everything you know at a given point. A reasonable person would have realized there's a problem. And that's when the clock starts ticking. So that 1 year limitation under the Consumer Fraud Act, that 1 year limitation is very specifically relating to home solicitation sales. And there are a number of requirements there that are useful and might invalidate or give you grounds to challenge a sale, a home solicitation sale. Next slide, please. Resolutions, the kinds of resolutions that we've been able to come to, which we think you can perhaps do without an attorney, but we've been successful in getting these kinds of remedies. Cancellation. So whether that happens within a month of the contract, or after it's been installed, or before it's been installed, or years into it. If it's after it's been installed, you got to decide whether to retain the system or remove it. And it's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, consider that if the system's been there for years, the equipment cannot be resold as new. So the lender or the lease company really doesn't have much of a market for that equipment to do anything else with it. They are really not interested in coming back and getting it. But they will if that's, if it works out that way, that they have some motive and you're not interested in keeping it. But if you are, I mean, consider that if you remove it, there will still be penetrations in the roof, and there will still need to be patches in those penetrations to prevent damage to your roof decking, because it does, believe it or not, rain in Arizona from time to time, and that can cause damage to your roof decking. So if you leave the system on, at least there's something sticking in those holes, and if it's generating electricity, we generally say leave it on. Let's see what kind of an agreement we can come to for you to leave it on and get the benefit of it. So cancellation involves making a decision about whether to keep it or not. Leasing companies, I'll tell you, the leasing companies frequently come and get, they're frequently willing to come and get them and patch the roof penetrations reasonably well. But if you're going for a resolution, you've got to look at the liens, and it's available in public record searches. You can look at the Secretary of State to see if it's been recorded there, or with the county. They can record them in both places. They record with the Secretary of State, and it's like a lien on an automobile, except that they have to renew it every 5 years. It will expire after 5 years. And with the county recorder, it's called a fixture filing, and it behaves just like a mortgage lien. If you go to sell or refinance the property, the title company will require that gets paid or satisfied from the sale, and that does not expire. We've been successful in arriving at some agreements to reduce the principal amount of the loan, where it's obvious that the dealer fees and other markups made the transaction fundamentally economically unfair. We say, the alternative is worse than reducing the principal. So we've been successful getting them to say reduce it by $10,000 or $20,000, and then they re-amortize the loan for a smaller loan payment. Sometimes when there's a dispute with the customer, the lender will offer a lump sum payment and say, how about we give you X number of dollars, and then we'll just go on like everything's okay. That's probably the least troublesome resolution for them, because they don't have to change any paperwork or do anything different. They just write a check and it's resolved, and that may be satisfactory if you get a big enough check. When a creditor, a lender in the business of lending, someone in the business of lending, when they forgive a debt, they cancel an otherwise good and valid undisputed debt, that may trigger, and they may be obliged to issue a 1099-C for cancellation of debt. So we know that a 1099 is an untaxed wage statement where you got some earnings or money that there was no withholdings on. And a 1099-C is for cancellation of debt, and the net could become an income event that would trigger tax liability on your tax return. So if you negotiated a cancellation of debt and you got a 1099-C, you'd definitely be submitting that to your CPA to see what they say you should do to it and with it. Credit reporting. The leasing companies we found do not report to credit. I'm trying to think if any leasing company, if you've seen any leasing companies reporting. I don't believe we have, but the lenders do, and it shows up as a mortgage loan on your credit report. So if you were working out a resolution, a settlement, then you would want to give attention to how it's being reported, and that it would be corrected to make it consistent with whatever settlement you come to. Consumers have various form where they may file a complaint that will be forwarded to the contractor or the loan company or the party on the other side. And these various non-judicial forms, the Better Business Bureau, Register of Contractors, Attorney General, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and Yelp, they have a role in keeping these guys honest. And so especially Better Business Bureau and Register of Contractors, those get some attention, and they seem to respond to those. And of course, if they don't respond to the Register of Contractors, their license could be terminated. And then finally, as a last resort, if the situation's bad enough, you may want to consult an attorney. Frequently, we see these transactions break some state and federal consumer protection laws or bend them. So consulting an attorney is a good idea. The next slide. The long-term investment in energy savings that comes from solar can provide benefits for the homeowner at the right price. You got to evaluate how much you're paying for it. Here in the Southwest, about $2,300 per kilowatt installed is reasonable. For example, a 10 kilowatt system should cost about $23,000. And that's a good benchmark to measure any offer to sell you a solar system and install it. About $2,300 per kilowatt. And a 10 kilowatt system will replace better than half of most household use, reasonable use. We suggest you get more than one offer. There are still a lot of companies out there that are selling and installing and good and well-meaning, and they do good work and sell for a good price, but get more than one offer. And then the bottom line is the system should not cost you more money in the long run than you believe it will generate in the long run. And if there's equilibrium there, it's a good deal. And that's our show. Pam, back to you.
All right, I'm just going to quickly say, how do we apply? I know we have gone over time. If you want to stay with us for questions, we will do that in a second. You can always apply for assistance by calling us. Here's our number, 602-258-3434, Monday through Friday, 9 to 2. You can also go online. And we are also in person Tuesdays in Peoria, Wednesdays at Native Health, and Fridays in Mesa, if you're in Maricopa County. So you can go in 9 to noon those days and apply in person. Make sure you bring any documents, just easier if we can make copies then. And okay, let's take questions. Again, Anthony will not be able to do legal advice, but we can answer. I know there are several questions about bankruptcy. Anthony, I know this might be involved, but briefly, if a solar company files bankruptcy, what are the homeowner rights?
That's an excellent question, because we had a whole bunch of our clients that we've been working with that had the work done by Titan. And The way the bankruptcy system works is when the company declares bankruptcy and the court mails out a notice to all the creditors, all the consumers, and others who say that the company owes them money, then the recipient of the notice of bankruptcy has the opportunity to file a claim. You can file a claim in bankruptcy court for the money that you believe the debtor owes you. Now, that doesn't mean you're ever going to get paid, because um, the kinds of claims that consumers would have would be unsecured claims. That's the bottom of the feeding chain, and they don't get paid unless everybody else gets paid. The taxes and administrative and attorneys fees and trustee fees. Only then is there something going to be available for unsecured creditors, and that's just extremely rare. So there's typically no money available to pay an unsecured creditor in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy like Titan's. The other issue that you got to keep in mind is that the installer is just one party to this transaction. You also made a contract with the lender. So now the lender is not in bankruptcy, but the installer is. If you file a claim in the installer's bankruptcy, but you later want to make a claim against the lender because of violations of law or breach of contract, the fact that you filed a claim in the installer's bankruptcy case may be grounds for the lender to say you consented to bankruptcy court jurisdiction. You don't have the right to a separate trial in some other jurisdiction. You certainly don't have the right to a jury. So it may not be useful, but it also could be a bad idea to file the claim in a bankruptcy case for those reasons.
If after they file, if after they go through bankruptcy, they get purchased by a different company, does the new company have to honor the warranty?
No.
Okay. Will, it says as a homeowner filing for bankruptcy, for not wanting solar panels anymore, will that jeopardize your home? If the homeowner files?
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so um, if it's a lease, it's no, well, so to answer your question, that's a great question. In fact, I should have put that at the top of the outline. They can't take your home. You do a solar deal, things go bad, and you don't make payments. They can't take your home. There's no mechanism for them to foreclose your home. End of story. But if you go to sell or refinance your home, there's a lien there that looks like a mortgage. And going through bankruptcy, the homeowner going through bankruptcy, just like with all other liens, bankruptcy does not by itself uh, do anything to a lien. The Chapter 7 doesn't do anything to the lien. Chapter 7 eliminates the debt. You don't have a debt to them, but there's still a lien, and in order to get the lien off, you've got to pay them something. So it does not risk, it doesn't put any, the fact that you have a solar system on your home does not create any additional risk in a bankruptcy, but filing a bankruptcy does not necessarily relieve the problem entirely because there's still a lien.
Finally, can any advocacy or work be done on improving how SRP and APS treat customers with solar? It seems that solar customers get charged more for kilowatt hours, and given such small compensation for energy sold back to these energy companies.
Yeah, excellent question. The Arizona Corporation Commission is the regulating body for the utility providers. And this program or scale under which they now pay you for exported energy is something the utility companies, surprise, surprise, they want to do away with that. They don't want to have to pay you anything. Um, the Arizona Corporation Commission is a political body, and subject to all those forces and influences. But Some call it the fourth branch of government. I don't know if Pam's heard that before or not, but some call the Arizona Corporation Commission our fourth branch of government. And as part of that regulation, they do require APS to install about $35 million worth of free solar every year. It works out to about 700 households each year get free solar under that program we talked about. But no, it makes sense that the utility provider, the utility company, it has a disincentive to help their customers generate the commodity that they're selling at home. When you generate it at home, you don't buy it from them. So that's where maybe public policy, which is to distribute generation so that we can move away from traditional fossil fuel generation and sort of temper our dependence on nuclear, but reap the benefits of the blazing sun. There's a competition between the public interest of encouraging that and then the private interests of APS. SRP is quasi-governmental, but I know the problem and I don't have a precise answer, but there are lobbying groups and there's a very robust Arizona Solar Energy Association that I'm sure is involved in lobbying ACC and monitoring how these organizations want to take advantage of the situation, however they can. But thank you for that question.
Okay, that is all of our questions. Anthony, thank you so much. I learned a lot today. I was really grateful for all this information you've given us. We will put this on our YouTube channel because I feel like I personally need to go back over all of this great information that you've given us. Huge resource for our community. So thank you so much, Anthony. I hope everyone else has a good day. Our next public webinar will be the last Thursday of April. All right, have a great day.